Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Jack from Emails That Sell.
Episode 29. Today we are going to look into liking.
Another influence factor from Robert Cialdini's book, Influence.
So in this episode, we'll see what liking is, as well as 3 different ways to achieve it. We'll also disclose a template email built around liking, specifically, that got replies for more than half the people it's been sent to. I know, it's totally crazy. And finally, you'll know why liking is actually my favorite influence factor of all. Jack, tell us what liking really is.
It's very simple. People like to say yes to those that they like, period. So there's nothing groundbreaking about that concept. Of course, we want to do business with folks we like, but it's really important because if you can bake some liking into your emails, people are more likely to hit reply and engage with you and later do business with you. And it's actually easy to do this with cold email, and we'll show you how in a moment. In case you're skeptical about how liking will actually help get you more replies, more sales, more connections, whatever it may be, there's a few scientific studies that back up that salespeople that use liking or people in negotiations that use liking benefit from it. So one of my favorite examples of this was in a study carried out between MBA students who were told that they needed to carry out a negotiation. In the first group, they were told time is money, get straight down to business. And in this group, around 55% of participants were able to come to an agreement. A second group, however, was told, before you begin, exchange some personal information, identify a similarity that you share in common, and then you can start negotiating. And in that group, 90% of them were able to come to a successful agreement. So from 55 to 90%, only thing changed was they threw in some liking at the beginning of the conversation.
Well, that's actually interesting because I remember when I was starting to do demo calls on QuickMail, I could definitely relate to that. I was even under the impression that actually people buy it just because they like me and not necessarily because it was solving a problem, which was not correct. It was solving a problem, but because I was very playful, the people enjoyed the conversation and they say, hey, why not? I'm going to give it a go. And I think that was tremendously positive and a big factor in how people actually ended up buying QuickMail at the beginning.
And the other way around, if you had, this perfect solution, but you were someone that was a pain to work with, it would have been very easy for them to leave the call and go find somebody else.
Yeah, look at why are you doing any business with bankers? Just because you have to, not because you actually want to.
Okay, so let's work this into cold email. Jeremy, talk about how you use liking in your cold email.
When you like someone, you're less likely to hit the spam complaint button. You can ignore, you can pass, you can archive, you can reply not interested, but you're going to get less harsher replies. And people are going to click less on the report spam button. And when people reply, they're going to have usually a positive vibe to it. And liking could be built with 3 ways, right?
Yeah. So the first way you can sort of inject your emails with liking is showing that you're similar to the person you're reaching out to. Next, you can use compliments to get liking to work in your favor. And finally, if you can show that you can help someone achieve their goal or you have a mutual goal in common, then liking is instantly going to be triggered and you can benefit from the liking principle in your emails.
Yeah, complimenting someone has been covered in episode 19, the Fox on a Crow, quite extensively. But I guess today we are going to also look at the other 2 ways. I used myself liking at the beginning of QuickMail by just contacting other SaaS business entrepreneurs like me who experienced similar problems. So I call that building bridges. Like you're trying to find a context that is very similar to your context and just build on that one.
So Jeremy, maybe somebody's listening and they think, well, I may have a product, but I'm selling it to someone who's completely different to me. How can they still use that similarity principle to build liking?
Well, there's plenty of ways, but it really starts with research. But when you're going to build the prospect list, you're going to obviously find some attributes that are similar. It could be that, hey, we're both in the same town, or hey, we are both speaking the same language, or hey, we both been to this school, or, you can build on a lot of things that are similar.
And I would argue, given enough time and information, you can find a similarity between anybody on Earth.
I call it warming up cold prospects. So it's not a warm prospect because you haven't had an exchange with them, but it's not totally cold either because you're basically bridging the gap between you and them, which basically puts you into the us group instead of the versus group.
Think about it from a list building perspective. Ideally, you add people to your list who share a common attribute with you, whether that's the school they went to, they graduated from Y Combinator, maybe you're both in the product development space, maybe you both used to work at a particular company, you're both at a stage in your business that is shared by few others, that kind of thing. And just don't take it for granted. Make sure if there are similarities, you drop that into your email. And I recommend that the first sentence, your intro for that first cold email in your sequence, should use liking every time. Yeah, you should use liking every time in that first sentence of your cold email because it'll set you up to relate to your prospect. So like Jeremy said, you're sort of warming up this cold prospect by building a bit of a bridge where you are and where they might be. And set up where you can throw in a compliment, which is the second way you can inject liking into your cold emails.
If you're going after a very broad audience, let's say you're going after dentists, for example, rather than just going point blank and contacting every dentist, in the USA or wherever, instead try to figure out how can I narrow it and relate to what I'm doing. It could be that you could find dentists who love extreme sports, and it doesn't matter which one. You could be also doing one of the extreme sport and just mentioning, by the way, PS, at the end is like, here's my sport, or some sort of like comment or wink towards what you're doing that people can relate to and say, oh, that's also one guy from my tribe. And then suddenly, just trigger like a positive reaction to it.
Yeah, and I know we talked about paying compliments in the Fox and the Crow, but I think every cold email sequence would be improved by testing out a compliment, ideally in that first one or two sentences of your initial cold email.
Yeah, and compliment is a good way to also go ahead and then create a campaign based on that. So you could look at whoever had an award in XYZ, and then you go after only the people who had that award, or that certification or whatever you can find. It just helps to think that way instead of the opposite. It's like, I got my product, who's using it and what similarity they have. You actually start with what vertical do I actually want to target, what commonality can I actually build on, and then you build your message based on that.
And it doesn't really work the other way around. I mean, imagine if, using the dentist example, if you had a list of 10,000 dentists, you would, be spending quite a bit of time trying to find a talking point that you share with all 10,000. But starting the other way works a lot easier.
I got a good one, actually. I used to do webinars on QuickMail at the very beginning, and one of the examples I kept giving was actually using liking to the full extent. So consider this one. The subject line was question from a fellow video game developer, and it was addressed to video game developers. It went like that. I'm a student in an executive entrepreneurship program, and I'm researching the typical challenges video game developers face in their day-to-day business. Having a master in game design, I'm passionate about helping video game developers, blah, 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 blah. And that actually had 22.8% reply rate on the first email, an additional 15% on the first follow-up, for a total of 51%, a bit more actually, 51.4% reply rate on the entire sequence, which really shows you how powerful liking can be.
The last way to use liking has to do with helping people reach their goals. So if you can come from a place of, hey, we both share the same goal, then they're more likely to like you and thereby reply to your email. So one way that you might be able to use this is to just simply state that you help a very similar person achieve exactly what it is that they're trying to do this year. So for example, let's say your company helps recruiters hire developers from Ivy League schools. You might throw in your email saying, hey, we help recruiters like you bring in developers from Ivy League schools. Since your job is being advertised on universities like Stanford and Princeton, I figured maybe you'd like to find a little bit more about how we've helped similar recruiters like this. If you can prove that you can help them achieve what they're looking to do, then you're using liking in your emails, and this is just, a third way that you can benefit from this principle here.
Yeah, and I have another example based on that actually. Imagine backlinking. Imagine you're contacting then bloggers, and you can basically exchange links so the both of you benefits from getting more traffic and bigger growth. And that's been also working pretty well. What's super important for me is if I only had like one influence factor, I'll use this one, because liking is one step toward trust, and trust is what makes relationship, and relationship is what makes sales. That's really how I see that. It's definitely not scarcity, like, hey, you have to buy it now, I only got like 10 slots. How is that going to generate a positive vibe and a positive reply toward me? So liking is the best thing. Even if you don't make a sale, you build a relationship, you build trust, and really that's all it is about.
In this episode, we learned that using liking in your cold email intros will help you warm up your cold prospects. Next, we found that similarities, complements, and mutual goals can help you benefit from this influence factor in your cold emails. And finally, build a list with people similar to you or with something worthy of an earned compliment to easily add liking into your email content. Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high vibe by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or Tuning, that works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
so they can send awesome emails
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.